But Mark, let's move on into our next discussion, and we are taking a look at the Indianapolis Colts. And the reason why we're looking at the Colts is they intend to hire the offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots, Josh McDaniels, following this Sunday, following a Super Bowl win or a Super Bowl loss for McDaniels and the Patriots. I want to ask this question just to start the segment out right. Can McDaniels turn the Colts back into winners?
Well, I think he can. I do believe it. And I think that McDaniels is one of the hot coaching candidates. And him going to Indianapolis, I think really kind of gives me some faith that things are going well with Andrew Luck. He is healing. He is going to be ready. He's going to be out there to play. Probably not day one of the season next year, but he'll be back. He is coming back. And I think this just kind of shores me up on that because you're saying the hot coaching candidate decided, yes, I am confident that I can go here. The one thing that I would say he missed out on in Denver, I mean, there's some other stuff too, but one thing he really, really missed out on in Denver, quarterback. He had Randy Orton. Kyle Orton. It's because of all that wrestling talk before. Kyle Orton.
Before the podcast, Sean was in here. We were talking about Ronda Rousey, and then you and I continued to talk wrestling. So a little RKO for the Broncos.
From the good old days of the Attitude Era. But they had Kyle Orton. They had Tim Tebow. Would anyone call either one of those guys a quarterback?
No. Well, I'm looking at it right here. 2009. Kyle Orton started 15 games. Chris Sims started 1. 2010, his second year, Kyle Orton started 13 games. Tim Tebow started 3.
Yeah.
Before Tim Tebow had the job then for most of the games during the John Fox opening year.
Although, when did Tim Tebow come in?
Tim Tebow came in that year. I think it was 2011 was week? His rookie year. He would have came in week 14. Because it was 13-4.
I don't actually, I think I might need to correct that. I don't think he was there. Josh McDaniels wasn't there when he started playing.
Josh McDaniels was there in 2009 and 2010.
Yeah, but I think he got fired before Tim Tebow played. Okay.
So he never played Tebow, but he got fired. Tebow was on the team then.
Because he only made it to, I think, week 12, week 13.
Okay. So he never played Tebow, but Tebow played those final 3 games. Mostly Kyle Orton was his starter, though.
Yeah.
And the thing that I look at with Josh McDaniels is that Denver team, he didn't have a quarterback like Andrew Luck. If Andrew Luck is 100% healthy, this Colts team is going to be back to a winning team. Like that first year that McDaniels was there, the Broncos were 8-8 and finished what? They finished 10th? 9th or 10th in the AFC playoff standings.
Second in the division.
Second in the division, but they were well out of the playoffs. And then the next year, they finished 4-12.
Yeah.
And that was the year he got fired. They finished last in their division and were tied for the worst record in the AFC that year.
And I think it's interesting to note as well that one of the things that McDaniels is known for in Denver is benching Brandon Marshall. The wide receiver Brandon Marshall, not the other Brandon Marshall,
who was on his team when he was in Denver, I believe, unless he came into regardless, the wide receiver Brandon Marshall.
Brandon Marshall, as we all remember, I don't want to say he was like a hothead necessarily, but he got into disciplinary issues, so he gets benched, and this is a Pro Bowl wide receiver that's getting benched. So I feel like the Josh McDaniels era in Denver was kind of doomed to begin with
because he had all the hotheads.
Yeah, he had some issues with player personnel. He had some trouble with, of course, they had their quarterback of the future. Quarterback of the future ends up getting traded to Chicago. You now have Kyle Orton. It just was not a good situation. It was not a situation, a recipe for success. And I like to make fun of McDaniels because he was there during the time that Tim Tebow was there, and I just find it funny because we all like to make fun of Tim Tebow a little bit. But, you just look at it and you're like, I don't think we can really count the Denver days against him.
No, I'm not counting them against him because, although I use this as kind of an example, it's not an exact one of Like, Elway wasn't the general manager when McDaniels was there, but that season, Elway was in talks to become the general manager, was then in 2011. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Elway was like, hey, when I'm GM, I'm getting rid of this guy. And then the Broncos were like, well, fuck it, we'll just do it for you. The owner's like, fuck it, we'll just do it for you. And then they cut him out because they were 4-12 that year with McDaniels. But like, Kyle Orton wasn't a prime quarterback. You had the issues with Brandon Marshall, and like you said, having to bench him. This Colt team, I believe, is in a lot better of a state in that sense than the Broncos were in. You have Andrew Luck, who, when healthy, I would say arguably top 5 quarterback in the league.
I don't think there's anybody arguing it.
I know, but like, there were some people like Brady. You put Brady, Breeze, Andrew Luck. I'm trying to
You're
think.
Thinking Rodgers.
You
might want to throw Russell Wilson in there.
Maybe Russell Wilson, Eli Manning. Some people would, but arguably top 5 quarterback in the league would definitely be, to me, a tier 1 quarterback in the league right now. You have weapons for him, especially a big one in T.Y. Hilton, who's good with him. The only thing that I think he'd need to shore up on the offense is the run game. Are you going to re-sign Frank Gore? Are you going to bring him back? Let him go? Are you going to bring someone else in? That, to me, is one of the questions. That and the O-line are two of the things you have to shore up, because for the past few years, you've had Chris Ballard go defense to try to get this defense shored up for the Colts.
Hasn't been working yet. But...
No, it hasn't. But let's be honest, when you don't have Andrew Luck out there, the defense is going to be out there a lot more than they should. Plus the injuries to the secondary. I know Vonta Davis, he was supposed to come back and then didn't because he's like, I'm not going to re-injure myself for this team. It's kind of a situation. So, I mean, really the biggest hothead he might have to deal with is Jim Irsay. That's the only hothead that he'll probably have to deal with the Colts.
Yeah, and I think that it's a tough battle for McDaniels. He's got to go out there and get himself top quality defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. That's what he needs. He needs somebody who can just take that and build this defense up with him and kind of take ownership of that defense a little bit. That's going to be so crucial to success because this is one of the worst defenses in the NFL right now. And yeah, sure, they're playing a lot. Injuries were out there, but Andrew Luck's not going to be out there day one. So this defense is going to get tested early again. Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to build them back up, get them into playing shape. I think if anything, I know I've been saying that go offensive line in the draft, but part of me leans towards just go with Barkley. Draft your running back. Nice and early.
I was going to bring that up because there's an article on ESPN that says, it's talking more so on the Browns, could Browns derail Colts draft plans of taking Saquon at number 1?
They certainly could, but they put it out there, we're drafting a quarterback. I think the Browns are drafting a quarterback.
Yeah.
The Colts, if you take a running back, you pair him, and he's supposed to be the best one in the draft, you pair him up with your top 5 quarterback. When he comes back and he's healthy, you got receiving weapons out there. It's not like there's nothing for Andrew Luck to throw the ball to. Sure, the offensive line can get better, but you can start to piece some of that together too. I don't think this is a 1 year and we're going to the Super Bowl kind of thing. But I definitely do think that when Andrew Luck comes back, this is a team that can make a big splash and start heading into the playoffs again and become this annual contender that they were when he was there.
Right now I'm reading an article that's very interesting because on ESPN it says the headline of the article is "Pressure is on Colts GM Chris Ballard with Josh McDaniels." And it's an interesting point because they mention how, according to Adam Schefter, that they're going to hire Josh McDaniels. It says here there will be pressure on McDaniels because he's going to have to be in charge of coaching the players, but there's going to be even more pressure on Ballard, who spent his first season cleaning house with the roster and analyzing the coaching staff. The Colts, who haven't been to the playoffs since 2014, must take a step forward after finishing 4-12 this last season. Then they talk about his contract, but the interesting part, and you kind of hit on this earlier, Ballard is hitching his wagon to a coach who clashed with players and coaches during his unsuccessful go-around as head coach of Denver. He was 11-17 as the coach of the Broncos before being fired halfway through the 2010 season. One difference this time is McDaniels won't be in charge of personnel decisions. That is Ballard's department. Here's the one question I have for McDaniels is we've seen already, besides I'd have to double check on the Ram days, but so far he's been a head coach in one situation. Everywhere else he's been a coordinator or the assistant to the head coach. In most of those places, except for 3 years, he's had the best quarterback in the league in Tom Brady. So to me, I wonder if this is going to be a situation of if we're looking at McDaniels to where it's like, you know what, we're giving you the benefit of the doubt now. You're going to probably have Andrew Luck compared to Kyle Orton that you had in Denver. But could this be an issue of we're looking at this at the end of this and we're just like, man, Josh McDaniels, just not a head coach. He's a coordinator. You know what I'm saying? Like,
totally possible.
There are coaches that we look at to where it's like, man, that guy, he should just probably go back to being a coordinator because he is not fit to be a head coach.
The hard thing, too, when you look at 2011, it was a really bad year for St. Louis. I mean, that was the year where they were worst team in the NFL. I believe that was the sophomore year for Sam Bradford. So it was not that great of a year. And then he ended up back over as a quarterbacks coach for New England, offense coordinator for New England.
You are 100% correct. Bradford played 10 games. AJ Feely played third, and Kellen Clemens played 3 games.
So it was not a good go around. You know, it could just be one of these things where honestly, you leave New England and things don't work out well for you.
Well, I mean, and that's like, I'm looking at it of, yes, it's true that he won't have to deal with player personnel because that'll be on Ballard's department. Maybe that'll help with the clashing
Certainly
with players.
But you're still going to have to deal with them.
Clashing with players, you'll still have to deal with them. But to me, the worst thing is clashing with coaches. These are supposed to be the guys that you are building a staff. You are bringing these guys in.
Yeah.
So if you've clashed with coaches that you've brought in before, that makes me very uneasy right now. And part of me, and I'm going to ask this question, is, I mean, they asked the question of, is McDaniels a good coach or just a product of Bill Belichick's system in New England? The question I want to ask you is, did the Colts wait too long on the head coach? Because we've seen throughout the whole thing, the Titans very quickly went for Vrabel, like very quickly got Vrabel.
Yeah.
The Giants pretty much, they did the Rams thing, fire their guy mid-season. Now we're going to go ahead and do our due diligence. They go and get Shermer. You see like Wilkes going to Arizona. All these pieces are falling to where the Colts are probably like, shit, we waited too long. We got to grab someone.
No,
Here's
I don't think that's it at all. I don't think that was it.
Because originally McDaniels was rumored to be the next Giant head coach.
Sure. But they wanted an offensive guy. They want a guy who can work with Andrew Luck, which I think, I don't know, I like the idea of going with the defensive guy personally. I said that before. But I don't blame him on this at all. I think what comes down for Josh McDaniels to me when it comes to clashing with players and coaches, he was in his young 30s. You know, this was, what, 8 years ago when he got hired? It's been a long time. So he was a young guy then. He is now in his young 40s. I'm sure he has learned a lot. He's gotten back under Bill Belichick. Hopefully that's kind of showed him the correct way to deal with things. He could have been the young hothead who's like, I worked under Belichick. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you guys my way or the highway, and it didn't happen for him.
You know who's an example I'll use from the college side of that? Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, when he was Tennessee, how he left there, when he was at USC, got that head coaching job at USC, didn't go that well, then goes and works for Nick Saban under him. Now he's at Florida Atlantic, and I know it's only one season, but it looks like he's A, learned from his mistakes as a head coach, and B, learned some things from Nick Saban. So, I mean, it's kind of a yin and yang, and no one can predict how Josh McDaniels is going to be as the Colts' next head coach. However, to me, is that question right now, especially in my mind, of will Josh McDaniels be that coach we look at the end of this tenure in Indianapolis and go, he's just not a head coach.
It's totally possible.
He's just not a head coach, and he's totally going to be just he should just stay to a coordinator. Because, I mean, you look at right now, the last Patriot offensive coordinator to leave was Bill O'Brien. And I believe he left to go to college, and then now he's back in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, look at how Bill O'Brien is going right now in Houston. This year, I kind of want to give him a pass because injuries on defense and injuries to your star rookie quarterback kind of derailed their season. But it hasn't been all sunshines and lollipops for O'Brien in Houston.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be interesting to see because the flip side of it, people might want to say, well, yeah, I mean, look at his success. It's been with Tom Brady.
Yeah, well, the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, so, I mean, people might want to say that when he had a chance to work with Kyle Orton, when he had a chance to work with Sam Bradford, things didn't go so well. So this will be a telling year, 2, maybe even 3 years for Josh McDaniels and what his legacy is going to be going forward. That's for sure.
Here's a question I want to ask you, and this will kind of trickle into our next segment. Is today we got a tweet at Most Valuable Podcast from at 3RI3 Adams, and he said this. He kind of asked about the Giants, and he said, but on a different team, the Colts. Do you think Josh, being Josh McDaniels, could pull a Denver and trade Luck and draft Tebow 2.0 minus Jesus and Allen? So what he's basically saying is that, do you see the Colts trading Andrew Luck to try to say, not for Allen, but we're going to trade Andrew Luck. He's not 100% healthy. We're not dealing with that headache, kind of like what they did with Peyton Manning almost, and go with a guy like Josh Allen or any rookie quarterback at number 3.
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure he's going for Erie in his Twitter handle because of the lake. But I don't think so. To me, you have Andrew Luck. You have a once-in-a-generation quarterback. And it's interesting. And this is not the thing that I'm addressing when I'm saying this, but I was thinking about this a few weeks ago. We've all just kind of forgot about how good Andrew Luck was. You know, when he was out there, he was a phenomenal quarterback. It was upsetting to many in the AFC or in football in general that they went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck over there in Indianapolis. That was just too good of luck. You know, it's going from
I see what you did there.
Right? It's going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. It's just not fair. It's what the Patriots were supposed to do.
Jimmy go. I'm sorry, that didn't work out.
That's what they were supposed to do. You can't pass that up. I mean, I understand the fear because of injuries, and maybe that's a thing, but you just can't pass it up. What are you going to do with Andrew Luck in that case? You know, you're just going to trade him to another team who's going to be thanking you for the rest of their franchise history because they got to then win a couple Super Bowls.
I mean, look at Peyton Manning for a prime example, where it's like Jim Irsay, we're getting rid of him because of the next situation.
Well, because of Andrew Luck.
Yeah, but really, like, if Andrew Luck wasn't there at number 1, then they would have kept Peyton Manning. But
yeah, that's my
point.
They
got rid of him, and look at Denver. Thanks for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We got 1. That's all. As long as you get 1, it worked.
Yeah, exactly. They're happy.
Could have got 2, but the Seahawks demolished you in that first one.
Yeah. The difference is that Peyton Manning was an old quarterback. Andrew Luck is still young. He hasn't even hit his prime yet. He'll still get to that in a couple years.
No, I'm on the same wavelength as you. You do not trade Andrew Luck. You keep him. Hopefully what you're banking on is that because Ballard is going to be dealing with more of the personnel choices for the Patriots, McDaniels doesn't have to focus on that, can focus on the X's and O's. Sure. Will get a top 5 quarterback to work with instead of the Kyle Orton that he had to work with when he was in Denver, and hopefully could get a Saquon Barkley because the Browns don't draft him number 1 overall. to be the guy behind Andrew Luck in the backfield and give you a receiving back who can also run the ball. Before we move on to Josh Allen, though, any final thoughts about the Colts or Josh McDaniels?
The only other thing I would say is I understand why some people might think that maybe Josh McDaniels will want to get his own guy. He'll want to get his quarterback. But without a doubt, I think Andrew Luck was the selling point to be in Indianapolis because there's not anything else. There's really not much else in Indianapolis where you're like, yes, I want to be there over anywhere else.
You're telling me Jim Irsay is not the selling point?
No, God, no.
You get to work with Jim Irsay? I mean, that's a pretty good selling point. Am I wrong?
If anything, that was that's the weighing of Andrew Luck, Jim Irsay. I don't know. It was a tough battle, but yeah, I think that this can be something good.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below. Can Josh McDaniels turn the Colts back into winners? And what do you think of the Josh McDaniels signing? Let us know what you guys think down below. He hasn't signed yet, but it's pretty sure he's going to be the head coach of the Colts. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section.